All right, we'd like to call the committee to order, if we could, and we welcome everybody out. Looks like we've got a great presentation, at least representation online, as well as here in person. So I believe we've got a quorum, but we'll find out in a second as we do roll call. So with that, let's start in the meeting. If we'd start with Dex.
Dex Winterton, Uintah Watersheds Council.
Thank you.
Rick Smith, Weber River Watershed.
Nathan Dowgs, Bear River Watershed Council.
Candace Hosniger, Director at the Division of Water Resources.
Tim Davis, DEQ Director.
Sterling Brown, Strawberry Water Users Association.
Laura Briefer, Jordan River Watershed Council and Salt Lake City Public Utilities Director.
Warren Peterson, my name says water attorney, I guess that's
It's one of your titles.
okay.
It's the nice time.
That's the nice title.
Brett Palmer, West Desert.
And hello, everybody. I'm Matt McEttrick. I'm the Southeast Area Manager for Utah Forestry, Fire, and State Lands.
Great. We've got several guests in the audience. Not sure how to introduce you, unless you want to come up to the mic. Yeah, let's do that. There you go. Nathan's got one.
So Nathan Lundstead, Director for the Division of Drinking Water.
Thank you, Nathan.
Eric McCulley, the past chair of the Jordan River Watershed Council.
Soren Simonson, Executive Director of the Jordan River Commission and staff support for the Jordan River Watershed Council.
Josh Zimmerman, Water Conservation at Division of Water Resources.
Joel Williams, Deputy Director at the Division of Water Resources.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, let's go online. Let's see, start with Cody Allred.
Yep, Cody Allred, West Colorado River Watershed Council, working for Pacific Corp.
Great, thanks, Cody. Teresa?
Hello, I'm Teresa Wilhelmsen. I'm State Engineer and Director of the Division of Water Rights. Sorry I can't join you in the room. I'm going to have to leave a little early and figured it easier to make an exit from here.
Thanks, Teresa. Bill?
Yes, Bill Winfield, Grand County Commissioner and representative from the Southeastern Utah Watershed Council.
Great, thank you. Elisa?
Sorry about that. Elisa Meyer, West Desert Council.
Thank you. Mindy?
Mindy Meese, I'm with the Virgin River Kanab Creek Watershed.
Great. Thank you. Sarah? Not seeing Sarah come on. How about Mark Stratford?
Yes, Mark Stratford, Legal Advisor to the State Engineer.
Thank you, Mark. Todd?
Todd Stonley, Assistant Director, Division of Water Resources.
Great, thank you. Lucy, sorry. Got to get my glasses on. Lucy? Go ahead, Lucy. We're not hearing you. And is it Ati? Ati? Oh, there you are. Thank you. And Chris Hamlet?
Yeah, good afternoon. Chris Hamlet. I'm the Director of the Utah Division of Emergency Management.
Great. Good to see you, Chris. Lauren Griffith?
Hi, Lauren Griffith, Jordan River Commission staff.
Great. Who are we missing? Looks like we've got a couple others on. on there. Carly, you need to introduce yourself as well.
Carly Payne, Watershed Council's coordinator with the Division of Water Resources.
Yeah, I hear something, a little something in your voice, so. Great. Any other visitors, attendees? Okay, Val J just came on. You want to introduce yourself, Val J?
Sorry, I had a hard time getting my mic off. LJ Rigby, Utah Farm Bureau. I was watching on YouTube, so I hurried and logged in so that you could hear me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, and then I saw a couple other names come up, but I don't see them anymore. Any other visitors want to introduce themselves? Trevor, go ahead. Trevor, can you? Oh, there he goes.
Yes.
All right, we better get started. Thank you, everybody. We got a great attendance. And I'm assuming somebody's keeping track of our committee members so that we have a quorum, correct? Hopefully. Okay, good.
From
Good.
what I'm counting, I think we're one short of a quorum at the moment.
What?
So we'll see if someone else pops in.
Did you count Trevor Nelson?
I'm not a
Oh,
board
sorry.
member. I'm just
Yeah.
tuned in today.
Scott Taylor?
Scott Taylor with Canab Creek, Virgin River Watershed.
Great. Yep, there we go. Are we there, Carly?
Scott, are you acting as proxy for Mike today?
No, I just wanted to listen to what's going on.
Dang it.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to act as proxy for Mike today?
Well, they don't have to do anything.
We need you to act as proxy. so we can move on. So if that's all
I
right.
just counted again. I think I miscounted and we have just enough. We have 13.
Great. All right, sounds good. Good. Thank you very much. Again, welcome everybody. We're going to continue on our agenda. We've got three great presentations going to be before the council this afternoon. So first up is Uintah Watershed Council report by Dex Winterton, and appreciate him coming. He's just brand new on the Utah Watershed Council, so we'd especially like to welcome him. So go ahead, Dex.
Well, I hope he didn't get your hopes up. He said you had great presentations. But we'll see
Hey,
how
you're
it
one
goes.
of them.
My name's Dex Winterton. I'm General Manager of the Moon Lake Water Users Association and newly elected chairman of the Uintah Watershed Council. I had a couple slides on there. We'll go to that first graphic I've got there, and that's just kind of up to show our watershed. We advance just one. I don't know who's controlling it. I've just got a couple graphics there.
Oh, there.
I'll hit the next one.
There
So that's our watershed off of the Utah Watershed Council website. You know, covers the entirety of Daggett, Duchesne, and Uintah counties, and pieces of Grand, Emery, Carbon, Wasatch, and Summit. So we cover a pretty large area there. Pretty straightforward. The next slide is something most people are probably aware of, but this little loop in the middle of Utah is where water from our watershed goes and is distributed and utilized. And so while it's not technically part of our watershed, I kind of wanted to point that out. Our water from our watershed goes there, and you know, it's not part of a watershed, but we do feel the weight of decisions and things that are done there, you know, especially when we consider just Salt Lake City is nearly 4 times the population of our whole watershed, just Salt Lake City. So just wanted to kind of point those things out, you know, and we feel the weight of those things that go on there too. As far as a presentation, you know, and I'd say in all honesty, our council probably hasn't been super active this last year. But we do have a few things that we'd like to bring forward, you know, things that we've talked about and things that are important to us that we'd like to bring forward to the Uintah Watershed Council to think about here. First is something I think we're all aware of and are all concerned about is just how dry it's been, the drought conditions we're all facing across our basins. You know, 2025 was exceptionally dry. And in our area, even the most senior water rights, the 1861 federally reserved water rights, aren't going to make their full allocation this year. It's just been a rough year. And while there's not much we can practically to do about this to resolve the issue, you know, we're kind of relying on what Mother Nature gives us. You know, it does deepen our fears and concerns as we see the needs for our water in the lower Colorado River Basin and on the Wasatch Front increase. It's always a looming concern that goes over the top of us. Second, we see concern from our Watershed Council about the management of the national forests, and sometimes it's perceived as almost a lack of management at times. Not only as we come into these dry years do we face challenges of wildfires, but there's also the where more actual management and things of like meadows and different things can actually increase in our water supply. And so, you know, as we think about these things, you know, to kind of help encourage forest for more active management and things that can help increase our water supply and create the healthier forests that we enjoy. Third, one of the things I see more often is agricultural producers, you know, they appreciate the support that has come from the state as far as help with grants and different things to help preserve their help improve their infrastructure and improve efficiencies. I'd say that farmers are well acquainted with conservation and making efforts to improve efficiency. This is something that has been necessary since the beginning of farming in Utah. Mother Nature hasn't been shy about imposing water cuts over the years, especially in our area where many of the secondary users rarely ever get a full allocation. One thing, though, that I think we often struggle with in the agricultural field is how those around the state, and you see it on articles all the time, is the kind of griping about the crops that are grown. You know, alfalfa particularly has had a bad rap. And it seems like it's often characterized as something that doesn't support or help people in Utah. But there's a lot of industry that works with alfalfa. You know, I just like to help encourage people, you know, who don't understand the benefits need some education, especially as they drink their milk or have ice cream or eat a hamburger or steak, you know, these different things that come from that alfalfa. And fourth, you know, we also have a thriving energy industry out in our watershed area. There's desire from that industry to make their water, the water that they produce and their processes, more usable and beneficial. And they're open to new technologies and policies to help them in those matters. And to kind of wrap up my presentation, I'd like to say a few things more on a personal note and the direction I'd like to see our Watershed Council take in the future. You know, from the beginning, I've wondered a little bit about the purpose and the need for these local watershed councils. You know, however, they were legislatively mandated, and so I've kind of ran along with it. And it's not until just very recently, as I was pondering the presentation, you know, and after talking with many of the members of the council, that I began to see some of its value. I think so many of the issues that we face in the water world have any level of control over seem to revolve around either misunderstandings or ignorance of how different things affect other people. You know, I've been involved in water management for over 20 years, focused primarily on the agricultural side of things, and thought I was pretty familiar with most issues regarding water. But being involved with this council, I realized that I began to recognize some of my own ignorance and things, even though I'm heavily involved in the water world. And, you know, there's just so much diversity in our watershed, you know, those that rely on recreational benefits, those for agricultural production, energy industry, and the people that just like a drink of water. There's so many different things, and that's not a comprehensive list, but it helps to illustrate how many viewpoints there are out there on the water. And so I guess that's just kind of a long-winded way to say that that's one of the purposes I see now for these watershed councils, is to help combat ignorance. The more we understand each other and the needs and the viewpoints we have on this precious resource, the more productive and effective we can be. And I think it's a great platform to share our needs and struggles and hopefully find understanding and solutions to the problems we all face. And with that, I'd like to extend an invitation to anybody across the state who's interested in water or water policy, and especially any legislators who intend to propose legislation or even vote on the legislation, to engage with these watershed councils. It can help them see all different sides and how it affects them. So with that, that's what I've got, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to engage.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Dex. Any questions or comments for Dex? Yeah. Yes, Warren. Yeah, absolutely, of course.
It's as we expected.
Exactly.
So you mentioned forest management as one of the priorities for your local council. We can see why you actually have forests.
Yeah.
Forested watersheds.
Yes.
And a lot more, probably a lot higher tree populations on those watersheds than is really healthy. So with the initiative that is going now to encourage better management of the forests, and that'll be from the governor's office legislatively, and I assume from our state agencies as well. How would you like your local council to be able to tie into that effort, or are you there already?
I don't know how many of them are actually involved at this point. I know we have Jack Lytle, one of our representatives from up in Daggett County, is heavily involved in a lot of those areas, and if he's directly involved yet, I don't know. But I think as a watershed council, we'd love to be able to have input and be involved in any way that we could. Like you say, it's something we've talked about but haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty yet of how to look at and help with those issues.
So you'd be the contact point, though, if that was.
Yes, please.
To come to your council. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, good comment. Thank you. So on the Colorado, as far, especially as people really don't understand how the Colorado River works and all the issues that we're having, we collectively as the upper Colorado River users, there are some serious negotiations going on as we speak, and it'll be interesting to see how those play out and how they might affect Utah, and as a whole, and everything else. So
those are tough to watch. It directly affects us, but yet we're kind of just sit on the sidelines and watch to see what comes out in the end, and
to see pretty much nothing happening.
Yeah, it's
just
it's
arguing
very concerning.
with each other. So that'll be very interesting to see what happens there. Any other comments, questions for Dex? Yeah.
Dex Sterling Brown with Strawberry Water Users. You mentioned energy development. That maybe I'm
energy industry.
Industry, yeah. Maybe this is out of your wheelhouse here, but are you prepared to speak to what developments they've made in the last number of years to conserve or to reduce or enhance water quality? What's going on in that space that I'm just not in tune with?
It's not necessarily my wheelhouse. Like I said, I'm more in the agricultural. This is where some of my ignorance comes in. But I know they have been making efforts to, different technologies they've been trying out as far as cleaning their water and making it usable to where they can even inject it back down and reuse the water that comes out. There's plenty of chemicals and different things that come out that I think they call forever chemicals, and trying to deal with those. I mean, so there's a lot of challenges in dealing with that. I know they've mentioned, there is significant water that's produced, and they do use a significant amount of water that they inject back down in the holes. But, like I say, I'm not one to really comment on exactly what technologies are out there, but I know they are trying different things all the time to make make things better that way.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Dex.
Thank you.
Appreciate that presentation. All right, moving on. We'll go to the West Desert Watershed Council report with Brett Palmer.
All right, thank you. I think we have a slide up on the screen for our watershed, for the West Desert Watershed. Yesterday I put a little measuring tool on Google Earth. I estimated about 280 miles from the northern boundary to the southern boundary on the west side, and took the little cursor up and estimated about 19,000 square miles of watershed. As a council, we are still trying to wrap our heads around how to manage such a diverse area from the northern tip of Utah to the southern end of the state. And but with that said, I think we're making progress. We have good attendance at our council meetings. We have had several presenters come to our meetings and present on different topics. Along with that, we had the opportunity, as our chair Paul Monroe spoke to several months ago, we had the opportunity to go out to visit the Grouse Creek mountain ranges. And there we learned about their mitigating efforts that have taken place to remove the juniper and pinyon trees. And I'll read this portion that I was able to find. It says that the pinyon and juniper trees, as they act like millions of tiny straws sucking up what little moisture they receive in some of our West Desert mountains. And they also found that the trees also inhibit the production of the sage grouse. And so as they have mitigated and removed those trees, which also aids with the lack of fuel for wildfires, it's restored vegetation that will allow the sage grouse to flourish. We also had the opportunity to visit several of the springs out there in that area. And so it's helping restore some of the watershed areas out there, and that's a good example of great efforts that have taken place. We also had the opportunity to visit Morton Salt Company on the southwest end of the lake, and we were lucky enough to visit during harvest season. As a side note, I spent a lot of time on the different salt plants, as my father was professionally engaged in that business for many, many years. And I commented to the person if he knew about this salt harvester that they were using, and we had a discussion. My dad actually invented the Palmer Richard salt harvester that is not only used in pretty much all the plants on the Great Salt Lake, but worldwide. So that was an interesting note that they're still using that technology. And with that said, I think our next meeting is in November. We'll continue to push forward with our efforts, and with that, that's all I have.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brett. Any questions or comments for Brett?
Well, yeah.
Gigantic watershed. Go ahead, Warren, you're right in there at watershed, aren't you?
Well, I'm let's see, turn on the microphone. What? I mean, if you hold the meeting in Eureka, people have got to drive 140 miles from each end just to be there. Is that?
That's right. So Our last meeting was virtual because of the wide distance that we each have to travel. And so we're still trying to work through those meeting times and meeting schedules. Most of our meetings have been held in Twilla County, but virtual seems to work best for us to get the best participation.
That distance factor counts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Are you, Dex talked about kind of catching on to the idea of what a watershed council could do for your area. Do you feel like you're past that hurdle yet, or are you still working on why
we're working it out.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out.
Well, with that much space, there's got to be a lot to talk about. So. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Brett, what are some of the other challenges you've mentioned? The juniper transformation, I guess, and of course drought. What other challenges you have out there in the West Desert?
Just the vast diversity. We have federal land. We have farmers that are involved, and just trying to come together as a group to try to figure out how to support one another in different initiatives that may come forward. Those are the types of things that we're struggling with.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about it, but yeah, you've got a lot of federal land over there.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Thank you, Brett. Appreciate that very much. Okay, last presentation by the Jordan River Watershed Council, and Laura Briefer will be doing that. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Scott. While we're pulling that up, I want to recognize we have our Jordan River Commission Director, Soren Simonson here. And Soren, you're welcome to come up in case you can add to this presentation. There's a seat, and Heidi.
There's a seat here.
There's a seat right here. And we have Heidi Hoven here too. She's our vice chair for the Jordan River Watershed Council. It's a real team effort. We're actually, I think, quite fortunate in that we organized our Jordan River Watershed Council via an already existing interlocal agency called the Jordan River Commission. That's, I think, really helped us to leverage a lot of the coordination work, some staffing of various processes, and really just elevate the Jordan River Commission and Watershed Council into a much more strategic group in terms of engaging a lot of different stakeholders in our watershed. So the Jordan River Basin is about a little shy of 4,000 square miles, but that also includes the Utah Lake watershed. It's about 791 square miles just within that Jordan River Basin there in the Watershed Council area. Our Watershed Council area includes all of Salt Lake County and some small parts of Utah and Davis County. We have the two major inflows to the Jordan River, which are Utah Lake, as well as several sub-watersheds in the Wasatch and Ochre Mountains. And then our outflow is Great Salt Lake. Our elevations are actually quite dramatic, ranging from above 11,000 feet down to 4,200 feet above mean sea level. And I believe we are the most populated watershed council in the area with over 2 million people. So we're characterized as quite an urbanized area with a very large population, although we have a lot of open space in our neighboring Wasatch Mountains, especially where recreation is also a very popular thing. We have over 3 million people visiting those Wasatch Mountain watersheds, sub-watershed areas each year to do things like skiing and wildlife viewing and hiking and running. So it's a very busy watershed. Let's see. also, because we had the existing structure with the Jordan River Commission to create our Watershed Council, we added a few other members, but our Watershed Council representatives right now include representatives from lots of different cities within our watershed. We've got water reclamation district and water providers, as well as water conservancy districts. We've got our three counties represented. We have a tribal representative on our council, several agricultural and industry members, and then wildlife and research members as well. We also have advisors to our Watershed Council that are non-voting, and those are comprised of several state agencies and federal agencies. So all total, we have about 36 council members that participate in our council. We have quarterly meetings that are held together with the Jordan River Commission Governing Board. Our quarterly council meetings have their own agenda and their own notice, but it's good because we have some overlap with our Jordan River Commission Governing Board and our council. At our most recent Watershed Council meetings, we talked a lot about our strategic planning efforts over the next year and beyond. And then we received presentations and were able to give feedback on the 2026 State Water Plan, the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan, and the Functional Flows Framework for the Jordan River and Great Salt Lake. We also do periodic legislative updates and field trips. The picture here is from one of our, it's in the upper area of Mill Creek, which is one of the watersheds, very heavily visited and recreationally important watersheds in the Wasatch. So recent activities and events and field trips that we've held, we took the Watershed Council and Governing Board to the Rio Tinto Kennecott Bingham mine. So our watershed has a very, very large mine in it, which was a great field trip. And then we also have a technical advisory committee associated with the Jordan River Commission that took field trips to look at stormwater infrastructure and low impact development. So in May, for instance, they visited Spanish Fork. In September, they visited the University of Utah and a project in Salt Lake City. And then we've also done a Jordan River media tour with the Great Salt Lake Collaborative. And that's a picture of the Watershed Council on the Rio Tinto Kennecott mine field trip. Additional activities and events, lots of volunteer activities along the Jordan River especially. The Jordan River Commission held a 15-year anniversary celebration with a number of events associated with it, and a Get to the River festival. That we just actually finished the Get to the River festival this last month. Oops, and then I just turned this off for all of us. There we go. Let's see. In August, we held a strategic planning meeting with our Watershed Council to talk about what watershed issues are important to our Watershed Council. And as has been mentioned in the previous presentations, there's a lot of diversity within our watersheds. Top of the list for our watershed has been water quality. Being in an urbanized area, we do have some water quality concerns along many of the drainages in our watershed, like the Jordan River and also some of the other drainages through the area. And then water supply is always on the top of our minds. A number of our members expressed that information and expertise sharing would be really informative and beneficial for them. Many of our members are elected officials and are not experts necessarily in water-related matters, and so would really appreciate some additional expertise sharing. Great Salt Lake, very important to our council. And then something that came up a number of times during our August council meeting was funding, and that's funding for watershed restoration activities, but also for water infrastructure, whether it's flood control infrastructure or drinking water infrastructure. That came up quite a bit. There is a strong sentiment towards making sure that we are preserving and restoring ecological function in our watersheds, as well as participating in public education activities. Recreation in our watershed is, of course, very important. And then something that may be a little bit unique to our watershed is just the impact that homelessness and the issues surrounding homelessness have along many of our waterways and our watersheds. And we actually had a presentation from the state, what's the state office? The state homeless coordinator, Wayne Niederhauser, came to the Jordan River Commission to talk about homelessness issues as well. Every couple of weeks or so, Heidi and Soren and I get together to talk about upcoming Watershed Council activities and topics that we're interested in. And we're still working through kind of our strategic priorities. That's probably an iterative process that we'll always be working through. We are looking at ways in which we can bring some of the technical expertise and information to our Watershed Council through a pre-existing technical advisory committee through the Jordan River Commission. We are considering several different topics for the next convenings: how we fund water in general, Great Salt Lake shoreline preservation. We'd like to invite other interlocal entities to engage with us, such as the Central Wasatch Commission. There's a good topic for discussion for us is that nexus of the quality of life for our residents, economy, and water, and how all of those things are integrated. So we're thinking about ways we can talk about that within our Watershed Council. And then, of course, engagement with the state planning and policy processes that are ongoing, and then specific information about tribal interests in our watersheds. That's my last slide. So I don't know, Soren or Heidi, if you have anything you'd like to add.
I'll defer to Heidi first.
Make this a press conference.
There's a lot more information on these slides, and so we welcome you to just take a look at these lists of our topics of, next convenings, for example. If there's any questions for further, discussion. All three of us have been working on one in particular, which I'll just take this moment to mention, is the promotion of a Great Salt Lake Shoreline Preserve, or you might have heard the Shoreline Heritage Area that Salt Lake County just elevated to a resolution a couple weeks ago. This is a very important consideration of both protection of the natural resources of wetlands and uplands that go around the lake and are influenced by the human footprint and other uses. So just, maybe keep an ear open for that. And I'll just let Soren jump in.
I'll just add, for being geographically a relatively small watershed, there's a lot of issues, I think because of all of the urban impacts that maybe some of the other watershed councils don't have to navigate, water quality being a really big one. We are, I think, at a really critical time thinking about water as the state continues to grow and many subregions around the state are enlarging rapidly. Water will continue to be just a really important priority. I think I'm particularly grateful to see how the development of the Watershed Councils Act and the establishment of these councils all over the state have brought together a lot of stakeholders that haven't always been around the table together in really meaningful discussions. I think our Watershed Council is probably under a magnifying glass because of the urban issues and the urban impacts. But hopefully, the kinds of conversations that we're having and issues that we're working through the model of bringing together stakeholders to try and collectively solve things. There's a lot of power in partnerships. Fortunately, we had an established partnership with the commission, but I think the Watershed Council, as a kind of an extension of the commission, has even got us thinking about water in different ways than we have solely as the commission. I will just add that the recreation component, although it's not one of those interest areas that's described in the Watershed Councils Act, and we raised the issue last year of perhaps adding that to one of those 11 or 12 topic areas, we continue to find that recreation is actually a great way to engage the community in conversations. For example, the State Water Plan used our Get to the River Festival to conduct some workshops thinking about water, and we were really grateful to have that opportunity for an important discussion within the context of a social and recreational activity happening throughout September. And I think that nexus between people seeing on the ground what's happening with the water systems and seeing the impacts of development and a lot of demand on resources gets people really thinking about how they can be individually involved in solutions beyond the things that we do as government agencies and other entities. So I'll just throw in my great support for partnerships, and I think this has really helped us leverage an existing partnership to even some more critical conversations that are going on. So thank you all for the work that you're doing.
We have a good team here.
Let's see. Sterling had a comment.
Yeah, it's a great presentation. It's obvious you're organized and you meet with purpose and you go forward with intention and seek to accomplish various things. That seems obvious in your presentation. I'm intrigued by your comment in your slide that said that you meet together with the Jordan River Commission. Would you elaborate on that a bit further? Piggyback meetings, is that what you mean by that? Or is it one meeting with two agendas? Yeah. And how do you meet so that you don't duplicate efforts?
It's two meetings piggybacked on each other, and we have different agendas for each meeting. The Jordan River Commission is more focused on, some of the Blueprint Jordan River, for instance, and some of those issues. And yet we're able to use the structure of the Jordan River Commission for administrative purposes and convening purposes to have that piggybacked meeting with the Watershed Council. And there is some overlap of members as well, but some additional members too.
I might just add to that, we are finding that the combined meetings has been a bit of a challenge. Yeah. We've been now about 2 years on this because we block out a couple of hours, and some meetings are just governing board meetings for the Jordan River Commission, and other meetings we do both. So we're meeting about quarterly throughout the year, and more frequently as a commission, but about quarterly as a Watershed Council. What we're proposing for next year is that we alternate. So 1 month is a commission meeting, 1 month is a Watershed Council meeting. It's essentially the same people, although the state and federal agencies are not voting members. They're present and participate really actively, and we value that. But otherwise, the two bodies are very similar, like a city council that functions as a board of canvassers or a local building authority. They wear multiple hats, or a redevelopment agency. So we kind of have different hats that we wear with the same people, but we're finding that we need more time to discuss some of these issues. So we're going to give this a test next year and actually have separate meetings for the Watershed Council that are just focused on those water issues.
Has the size of your large council changed since you were created, or did you start with 36 members?
We started, the Jordan River Commission started with, I think, 8 or 9 entities. We just crossed a milestone this year where we have every local government that touches the Jordan River and has regulation participating when Utah County rejoined back in February. So we have a large governing board for our commission. It's a total of 45 members. which seems large, but it's a fraction the size of the legislature, and they seem to get a lot done. So given the complexity of issues and all of the voices at the table, I don't know how we would do what we do with less than those that we have. And sometimes we've even still seen voices that we don't have at the table, even with that large group.
Yeah, that's why we want to engage more of the technical advisory committee as well, which has stakeholders and members that are not necessarily represented on the commission or the governing board, but hold a lot of important knowledge and perspective.
It's interesting. We listened to the east side from Dex and the west over with Brett and their challenges of vast open space and 280 miles and those challenges. But maybe it's safe to say, Laura, that your challenges are equal, just different.
Yeah, I would say so. Just, I mean, as Soren just said, there are often times when we feel like we're missing a perspective because there are so many different perspectives and so many people with different stakes in our watershed. That's partly why we're starting to talk about engaging the Central Wasatch Commission, for instance, to bring those headwater perspectives more into our Watershed Council.
A quick one too. So I'm going to go back to Sterling's comment. So again, the nice thing is you have this commission with funding and money to actually do something. Again, collaborate, but then there's actually someone to actually take action. The other question I have was Davis County. Who from Davis County actually attends or engages with you guys?
So Commissioner John Crofts is the designee from the Davis County Commissioner or Commission that participates on our council this year. He replaced Randy Elliott, who stepped down from the commission last year.
Great, thanks.
Great. Yeah, I noticed from the laundry list of issues that you have in your watershed that population is kind of at the center of all of those issues. Recreation being a huge one. I mean, they've got to have somewhere close to recreate, and they all find a place close to recreate, whether you like it or not. Yeah. And so using that platform as more of an educational tool, I think is a great idea. Makes a lot of sense.
Another thought and one thing we didn't mention too in terms of stakeholders is the development community and the fact that we've also been participating in statewide housing conversations, and there's a very significant nexus between water and increased housing. And one of the meetings that I participated in, I recall someone saying, well, it's interesting where we have all the land is not where we have the water. And so we're talking about constraints in terms of trying to make sure that we can provide the housing needed for our communities, but with, where the resources are and how those resources are used. So that's another topic that I'm sure will come up in our council.
I'll bet. Yeah.
Scott, let me just add one other thing too. One vacancy we still have formally on our Watershed Council is a representative from Great Salt Lake. I know there's been discussion about GSLAC or the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council serving the role as the Watershed Council. I don't think that's been formalized yet, although I know they're kind of functioning in that capacity now. But one of the statutes of the Watershed Councils Act is that we have a representative from the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council on our Watershed Council as well. And we might just put that out as a request. If that's something that we want to formalize, we would welcome that going forward whenever that opportunity presents itself.
Great. And then Tim.
Yeah, there's so much to work with here. It's amazing, isn't it? But I'll be seeing Tim Hawks over the next couple of days. I'm going to hit him up for that very thing. Thank you, to get that representative in place. A number of things. One is you mentioned that recreation is a need and such that you have been addressing. And I think that's instructive to all of the watershed councils, is you have things like that are maybe unique to yours, maybe not. But the statute is written broadly enough that you can basically build into your council whatever is important to your area. So you were the first watershed council to come in and with the partnership with the Jordan River Council, so it's working fairly well. You're the I think that makes you the great grandparent of all the other watershed councils. So what advice have you got? I wanted to just ask you, Laura, maybe if you just had to trade places with Brett, what would you bring to his council? What would you bring to Laura's council? And it seems like there's an opportunity for a lot of exchange of ideas there.
Actually, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, Warren, because as Brett was talking, I was like, we should really get Brett to come to our council and talk to our council about sort of the things that they're doing and learning along the way. Because I think while we all have maybe different characteristics in our specific basins, one of the things we all have in common is there's a certain amount of complexity and a lot of learning that we can do from each other, and so I can't answer your question directly right now because I'm still thinking about it, but I think it would be really great to have that that interfacing between the councils.
Yeah, well, maybe it'd be fair, Mr. Chair, since Laura is thinking about it, Brett, why don't you call her in 2 weeks and see what she's got? Okay. The other thing is you have 36 council members, and you're still saying there are interests. So I think that's a demonstration of how the stakeholder interaction is extremely valuable. Mm-hmm. And I thank you for since we started organizing this thing a few years back, you've really brought it forward and shown how it can be done. And one of the problems I'm sure that Brett has is that in the rural areas you have the STP problem. Have you heard of the STP problem?
Is it oil?
No. Yeah, well, it's the same 10 people are on every council down through the whole.
That happens in our watershed.
So maybe you could loan Brett a few people, or Dex. But I think this illustrates that once you get the thing going and people realize the value, you'll see an increase of activity and are really to become relevant and to make these watershed councils the planning agency for water in your area and the exchange of information. You're showing how to do that very well. So great reports, Mr. Chair. Thank you for letting me steal so much of your time.
Thank you. Tim, you got a comment.
So Mr. Chair, Warren already stepped in and nominated, I think, Tim Hawks to possibly represent the Great Salt Lake. That was going to be my recommendation as a place to start as well. He's the chair of the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council. And the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council really is standing in as the Watershed Council for the Great Salt Lake. And then following in Warren's footsteps, on that. Then I also just wanted, since we're talking about recreational water, I wanted to let the council know that the Department of Environmental Quality, we're pulling together sister agencies, local county health departments and others to really talk about how do we handle harmful algae blooms, E. coli, things that we thought when I started working in water quality a long time ago, felt like we were going to just it'd be one season, not every season, whether you were talking about Schofield or Manaway or Utah Lake. And so we're accepting that these are probably going to be with us. And so we need to move from reaction to education. So that's something, as that moves forward, I wanted to offer to the council. If people are interested, we can come back and give a presentation of what that looks like, how we would respond to that differently. That involve Forestry, Fire and State Lands, Division of Wildlife Resources, and others, state parks, Division of Water Quality. So that's something that we could bring back and share with the council, because I do think it's a transition from what we thought would be, we just needed to respond and react to each season, but we've now kind of gotten to the point where we just need to assume that it'll happen every year, and then we need to prepare people for that. So just an offer.
Mr. Shirley, could I pick up on that very quickly? You mentioned strategic planning, and that's really what these watershed councils could be best at. You're talking about a strategic planning item, really, and it probably would, I think, be instructive if the Jordan River Watershed Council can share some of their experience in setting up strategic planning. I don't want to speak for these other council members, but I think, Dex, would that be helpful to you? Brett, would that be helpful to? All right.
I think, yeah. Great point. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It was great information. Thank you. Excellent. Okay. I should have mentioned 4 great presentations. We've got one more. So we've got a presentation on watershed management from Matt McEttrick, of the Southeast Area Manager of Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. So go for it, Matt.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, everybody. Matt McEttrick, Utah Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. I'm the Southeast Area Manager, so that's Grand, San Juan, Emery, and Carbon counties in Utah. And then I also want to introduce Jennifer McBride, our statewide UI coordinator. She's here too, right there. So she's here to help answer questions if anything comes up during the presentation. Thank you for having me. So I was invited today to give a talk about some of the things that we're doing on post-fire restoration projects in Utah and in Southeast Utah today. So what am I going to talk about? Today, I want to just briefly give a quick overview of what Forestry, Fire, and State Lands does. And then I'm going to talk about some of the things that we consider when we're putting together these post-fire restoration projects. And then talk a little bit about kind of a case study for some restoration we're doing after the Deer Creek fire in the southeast area that I'm heading up right now. So here's our mission. We manage to sustain and strengthen Utah's forests, rangelands, and sovereign lands for watersheds, for its citizens and visitors of Utah. I think everyone here is probably familiar with sovereign lands, but what those look like for us in the southeast area are mostly lands along the Green and Colorado River. But there's parts of Bear Lake and other areas in other parts of the state. Y'all probably know more about that than I do, honestly, but just for anyone that's not sure what a sovereign land is. There we go. So we have 4 main program areas. We have forestry, our wildland fire program, our wildland urban interface program, which is technically part of fire but sort of functions independently. We call that one WUI for short, so I'll be saying WUI a lot today. That's what I mean. It's not WUI, it's just WUI. And then again, the Sovereign Lands program is a big part of what we do too. And I put river there because again, that's what we mostly do in Southeast Utah with that program. Sorry, I think my clicker is running out of batteries here. There we go. All right, so real quick, I won't spend too much time running through these programs, but our forestry program, thank you, mostly focuses on work on state and private lands. We do partner a ton with the Forest Service on different kinds of management projects, focusing on scenic beauty, wildlife habitat, clean air, and timber supply. Each of our area offices has a area forester, and they collaborate with private landowners, the Forest Service, and anyone else that's looking for technical information. We have a forest stewardship program offering assistance to private landowners if someone's, confused about how to best manage their property to minimize bark beetle, or if they have a specific management goal regarding some kind of timber production, we can provide them help with that as well. We also spend a lot of time collaborating with DWR on wildlife habitat type projects in Southeast Utah. Our wildland fire program, keeps us really busy most of the time. In Utah, the way that we kind of step into that role is when there's fire on state or private land, the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands manages that fire. We spend a lot of time working on unincorporated county land. Sometimes, lands that are outside of that might be either part of a municipality or managed by a fire district. So we're kind of exist in that area that's it's not federal, it's not necessarily part of a municipality, but somebody has to be responsible for it if there's a wildfire. And in Utah, that's actually a pretty good chunk of land. Our main contacts on the ground are every county in Utah has a fire warden that kind of works with those local cooperators and puts out information about, you know, things like the cooperative wildfire management system that we have in Utah that municipalities, counties, and fire districts use to tie into state resources if there's a fire and to kind of help with the finances of that, well, you know, after the fact, so that, you know, a county isn't stuck with a $20 million bill for a fire. So that's the CWS system. I mentioned most of this already. Oh, we also do burn permitting. And then our WUI program. Again, WUI is that wildland-urban interface, and that just means the area where there are structures and other human development intermingling with wildland fuels, so generally with forests or treed areas. This is an area where you get a lot of issues regarding wildfire, obviously, because there's, you know, people using that area extensively, and we try to address risks to life, property, and infrastructure in those areas. One of the main ways we do that is through fuels projects, so doing work before there's a fire to try to address those issues. We also work on providing information about home hardening for homeowners and things like that. Yep, talked about that. Yeah, in some areas, we're also working on collaborating on prescribed burns. We haven't gotten into that yet in Southeast Utah, but we hope to. Prescribed burning is useful to us because it's a way to treat much larger areas than you can by just, you know, hand thinning an area or using, you know, masticating equipment, that kind of thing. So prescribed burning is an important tool in our toolbox, but obviously, you know, there can be complications related to that if something doesn't go the way we want it to. So we want to be extremely careful regarding prescribed burns and, you know, things that we say around that. Sovereign lands, real quick. This is just a brief overview of the areas in Utah that are sovereign lands. Again, in my area, it's mostly that kind of bottom right corner there. It's the Green and Colorado rivers. It's not the entire area along those rivers, but it is some very important pieces, including the Moab Daily, which some of you might have done. It's a really beautiful river stretch, so we get to manage that. We're lucky to work on that area. And also Utah Raptor State Park, which just opened, is actually sovereign land too. We did kind of a exchange agreement with state parks on that. The work we do as far as managing the sovereign lands mostly consists of riparian, meaning along a waterway, restoration work, so revegetation, non-native removal. We do pick up some trash. We've been working a lot on some of the side drainages as well, trying to get some of those areas that normally flood to reopen by removing veg and trying to encourage habitat for native fish and effective groundwater recharge. We also handle the permitting for special use leases like outfitters, or sometimes there are industrial users that we have to coordinate with on those sovereign lands permits. All right, but anyway, what about post-fire? That's what I was invited here to talk about. So post-fire for us is becoming more and more important every year because we're getting these larger and more destructive wildfires. We've already been working on some of these things in the past, but this year we're making a push because of HB 307 that's kind of encouraging us to step into that role more and do more work on post-fire. And there's a funding opportunity related to that I'm going to talk about as part of this talk. So that may be really useful for folks that are going back to their watersheds. And if you're looking for money to do this kind of work, we may have an opportunity to do that. All right, so what is post-fire rehab? Fire on the landscape here in Utah historically, has existed for thousands of years. We can see that in tree ring data and things like that. But as time has gone on here, again, we're getting larger and more destructive fires, and there are these impacts that need to be mitigated. The humans are using the landscape more. We have more things that we're concerned about, and we really need to focus on those environmental, economic, and social issues that happen in the wake of one of these larger fires. So what do these impacts look like? The environmental impacts, one of the main ones that we see is soil erosion. So there's an example here from a fire in California. But one of the biggest impacts we see are these, when we have the vegetation removed from a high intensity burn, you get a lot of soil that doesn't have anything anchoring it. And on top of that, the soil chemistry can change so that it doesn't bond as well with those water molecules that fall out of the sky and result in these big landslides that you've probably seen. They can happen very quickly. Within, a few weeks of having a fire, you can have issues related to soil erosion and, debris flows, things like that. There's also obviously huge loss of habitat and species is possible, and then altered physical conditions. And what I mean by that is you can have one set of things, say a forest of ponderosa pine, and then you have a fire, and afterwards that area could be totally denuded and much more exposed to solar radiation. And those ponderosa trees may not be able to regenerate there, even if you are able to, have seeds there to grow those trees back. So it's another thing we have to contend with when we're planning these projects. Can we get it back to how it was? Would it make sense to maybe be looking at something else? And then how do we figure that out? And is that going to work for that community? Is it going to work for the users of those lands? So we have a lot there. And then of course, smoke also has a huge environmental impact, both to the kind of environmental functioning of that area, and then of course the people that live there and some of the impacts they might have to their health. Really briefly, also, we don't address these as much, but there are, of course, huge economic impacts. One of the biggest ones is to life and property when the fire happens. And then we also have to think about things like we've been dealing with this issue of insurance coverage in the wake of these big fires, and some insurance companies are now starting to either increase rates or actually say they're not going to cover people in certain areas of Utah. That's been happening in my area. So obviously that's a huge concern for homeowners. And then also, in Southeast Utah, we spend a lot of our time trying to make sure we can keep our tourism going. And these fires can have a huge impact as far as reducing recreational opportunities, and also sometimes making it difficult for people to access the areas that they want to recreate in or use for whatever they're doing, whether it's mining or other things like that. And then I've kind of touched on these too, but obviously there's huge mental and emotional well-being problems that can happen. It's very traumatic to have these fires. It's really scary for people. They feel out of control. They don't know what to do. And then after the fire, frequently there's loss of housing, or people can't get to their employment that they either started or that they work at. And then there can be these disruptions to community function. And what I mean by that is, sometimes during these fires, they're very stressful events. They heavily tax all different parts of communities and, state agencies, federal agencies. And it can result in these, long-standing issues that are going to happen for years. If something goes wrong with one of these relationships, it can change how a community functions and interacts within itself for a long time to come. Even, long after the fire's out, we can have these impacts. So this isn't something we address with our post-fire restoration projects, but it's definitely something that we keep in mind all the time when we're working on these projects in the wildland fire role, that we have to keep those relationships strong. And that's something that we give as a primary goal when we have fire resources coming in on a fire. We want the relationships to be better than when they started. So we found over the years that's extremely important to emphasize that. All right, but what are we doing for post-fire? So our work mostly focuses for now on these environmental impacts that we mentioned. We work a lot on erosion, and I'll get into some of the details of these. We do a lot of revegetation, trying to build resilient forests that can regrow or be able to adjust to these fire disruptions. And then we also do work on protecting critical infrastructure like bridges or culverts or roads, and critical watersheds. So frequently those are, perennial watersheds in these areas that we focus on initially, and then kind of with an eye towards those, maybe focusing on areas higher up in the watershed where we can do things that will support the bottom of the watershed. So what do we actually do? So as far as erosion control, basically right at the top there, that's kind of what we're thinking about. So these burn scars are huge flood risks. Again, getting back to that idea of debris flow. We can do a lot with seeding initially. That's something that we can do quickly. We can do it aerially. There's a picture of somebody hydro seeding here. We can also apply it by hand in select areas, but usually we're dealing with these massive acreages. So aerial seeding can be a great way to get seed onto the landscape. It's not always as effective as other methods of seeding, but sometimes, you know, again, there's a time component here, so we want to get that seed on the landscape quickly. And sometimes it's not easy to access every area where you want to get seed. So again, aerial seeding can be good for that. I put erosion control structures on here too. These can take a lot of different forms. You know, you can have everything from a really large sort of rock and tree-based structure down in the bottom of a watershed all the way up to, you know, much smaller things that are much, much higher up in the watershed that could be felling logs on contour onto the landscape and using those kind of as water bars, using what's already there from the fire to stabilize that landscape and then seeding those. This is an example of actually digging a small trench and then filling it with debris from the fire to make sort of rows across the landscape that can limit erosion that way. There's also structures you can make with rock called one-rock dams that can work if you put them way up high. So the idea being that if you can intercept that water before it gets down into the watershed and picks up a lot of speed, you can actually have a really strong effect that rivals some of those really big, expensive structures. So that's also a way to stretch the budget out a bit too. And then also mulching or slash application across the landscape can also be really useful. This is kind of a neat picture of the Forest Service dropping hay bales via helicopter. That's what that kind of exploding thing is. And other than looking really interesting, it's a method of getting some mulch out into the landscape. So it's another way of trying to contain water on the landscape. And these hay bales can be dropped aerially and again, cover a much wider area more quickly. You know, we could go out and cut some of those trees down and cut them up and apply the slash to the landscape, but that would take a lot longer. So for a big area, sometimes something like that can work. Also, you know, if you're able to access the area with a wood chipper or a masticator, that's a great way to stabilize soil too. Okay. So we also work on revegetation. This is a little more straightforward, but we will do in certain cases if there's something that we really want to make sure we get back, like if there's a valuable timber production area, sometimes we'll actually use containerized planting, which is a lot more expensive. We talked a little bit about seeding. Here in the re-veg portion, I put targeted seeding. So sometimes we'll build some of those erosion control structures and then have a specific seed mix for each area. Like we'll have a riparian mix, we'll have an upland mix, and we'll actually apply that mix to those structures so that there's kind of a little microclimate there that traps moisture and shades the seed. And so you'll get little islands of plants coming up that can then produce seed and kind of spread out from there. So the targeted seeding is in high value areas where you want to spend a little more money, but you're going to get a better result. And hopefully you space them out in a way where they can eventually cover everywhere you want. In some of the watersheds lower down or in the actual stream beds, we'll also do some kind of erosion control slash bioengineering, so using living material in those structures. This is an example of a willow wattle. So those are horizontal willow that's been lashed together and then is staked into the bank. And along the whole length of those living sticks, actually willow will sprout up horizontal or vertically from there, and you'll get, you know, a whole hillside covered in willow from just cutting, you know, 25 feet of willow and lashing them together like that. So that's one example. We also do other things like beaver dam analogs to help stop water and contain it, and with the idea that eventually, hopefully, beaver could come back to those areas and start using those areas again if they were there, you know, to begin with. So that's revegetation. And then I put in some pictures here of some larger scale projects just so you can see them. So when I was talking about larger projects lower down in a drainage using large logs or rock, this is an example of that. So this would be like watershed protection. You can see on the left here, this is an example of some of the things that happen when you get that uncontrolled flow across the landscape after a fire. And you can see there's been a lot of down cutting in this channel, cut utility lines, sometimes maybe a little bit too near the stream that are then undermined. And it's a huge problem because, as you probably know, the stream kind of acts as a unit as far as the gradient. And so if you undercut or downcut severely one area, the rest of the stream is going to, it's going to create a nick point that then moves along the channel and is going to kind of readjust the entire watershed above that point. So it's a huge issue. One way to deal with that is have it fill back in if possible. And it needs to be planned very carefully, but it can be quite effective. We had one we did in Mill Creek recently in Moab that's worked well so far, and it's been 5 years now, and we've had some pretty big floods. So, those are much more expensive, and they can be risky in terms of the amount of money you're spending, but it's pretty familiar with those. Really important. I mentioned that's a lot of time trying to figure out after the fact, so if we can then keep that from happening using some of these erosion control structures that we've talked about, it's a huge bonus if we can just keep that from happening at the get-go. Also part of our work at Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, we have this new post-fire rehab funding opportunity that's just opening now. This is new for 2026. So this funding is going to focus on severe ecological and hydrological impacts, and it supports work to stabilize soil, reduce runoff, manage sediment, and protect these critical watersheds. You can read it up there. But basically we want to promote ecological recovery and build community wildfire resilience and protection as much as we can. Key point here, the funding cycle for this is ongoing. So it's not going to be open for a certain period of time. It's going to keep going. So you can apply whenever is appropriate. We don't know, when fire necessarily is going to happen. So we want it to be straightforward for groups to apply for this. Who can apply? This is intended for folks that are in that CWS program that we mentioned earlier. So that's counties, fire districts, or municipalities can all apply. We can also, at the state of Utah, in Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, we can apply as well. So if there are communities that want to partner with us, we can certainly do that to apply for these funds. So, let us know if you have anyone that's looking for help on that. And I want to kind of close out here with a little example of work that we're actually doing down in Southeast Utah. So we just kind of finished up this Deer Creek fire that we had this past summer. I believe it started on July 10th, I think, was the first day that it was burning. If you're familiar with the Moab area, that's kind of that map is sort of the southeast side of the La Salle Mountains, kind of down towards La Salle itself. The fire burned a little under 18,000 acres, and unfortunately it did burn some homes. Thankfully there were no fatalities. There were some other structures that were burned as well, such as like a few Forest Service buildings. And most of the burned area, you can see the green on the map, was U.S. Forest Service. And then there was some state Sitla land that burned, and BLM and private. And it cost us, well, not the state, the total cost was $24 million. So what are we doing now in hindsight, or to restore the area? So we have recently finished writing a proposal that was written between Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, the DWR, the Division of Wildlife Resources, the Forest Service, San Juan County, which is the county that the fire was in, and then we also have some great local nonprofit partners, and then input from the private landowners that were affected. The work is going to include some aerial seeding that's going to be based off of the slope of the landscape. So we don't want to seed in areas where with rain the seed's just going to wash downhill into the bottom of the watershed. We want to just focus it. So that can save us some money, but then also put the seed where it's actually going to be effective. We're doing a lot of those erosion control structures that I keep harping on. We're going to try to focus our efforts initially on the upper parts of the drainages so that we can try to put in more smaller scale structures, so we're not going to have a huge impact on the landscape, but hopefully keep that water from getting down into the bottom as much and training a bunch of sediment and rock and everything and making these debris flows. So that's our initial goal here. And then we're going to do some of that targeted seeding in association with that work. So we're going to put in these structures, but we're also going to seed them so that once that seed starts growing, it's going to hold the structures in place, and it's also going to hold the soil in place. We're also going to do hazard tree felling. So you can see in this picture, this is actually really small. These are like a foot high that you're looking at, but there's big trees out there too that are hazardous, just standing along roads and along places near where there's recreation happening. We'll fell some of those trees and then we'll use that material to kind of lay them on the slope of the hills and mountainsides there, and use that to kind of keep the soil in place. And then again, seeding those. There's a kind of a theme here of just seeding everything as much as we can all the time. It's cost effective and it works well. And then we're also going to work with San Juan County on some roads and culvert evaluations. Some of those might need to be a bit bigger than they are to manage the possible increased debris flow. The timeline for this project, this is going to start this fall, and then it'll run through next July 1st. We're going to look at, continuing this work. So this isn't just like we do this project and then it's done. This is just a beginning, and we'll see, what's working, and then apply for more funding and continue the work. We asked for $1.3 million, and it's looking like we're going to get about $400,000. So we can do some great work with that money. All right. Thank you for inviting me. And I hope this was some useful information for y'all. But please let me know what other questions you have, because I'm not entirely sure exactly what this group is looking for. So please let me know, and I'm happy to tell you what I can. And Jennifer's here too. So
well, that was an excellent presentation, Matt, because this is exactly what I was looking for.
Oh, okay, great.
It's very encouraging that the state is involved in that much restoration efforts, the mitigation after post-fire.
Okay.
And it's too bad that we couldn't get the Forest Service to join you in a presentation, because it'd be really interesting to see what they are doing. But because of the lack of work on the federal side, they declined to come to attend. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, shut down. There you go. One question I had was, I don't know if this is a myth or you kind of alluded to it, but soil sterilization.
Mm-hmm.
After a very hot fire.
Yeah.
Is that a real thing? I mean, will plants grow in the short term? Or do you have to wait? I don't know what you have to do.
To some extent it's a thing. It depends on the severity of the fire, so how hot the fire burns, and pretty much every fire is a mix of, it burns hotter in one spot and less hot in another spot. So there'll be areas throughout the fire that will be more what we call mosaic. So there'll be some trees left, there'll be some partially burned. Those areas will usually recover pretty well on their own. They're less prone to erosion because there's still some things that are alive there. The areas that do kind of get sterilized, would be the really, really, really high severity, the absolute hottest parts of the fire. As far as the soil, it can still support plants, but there might not be living seed source there that can provide that. So that would be a time maybe we would put in some seed or do some plantings. And maybe even in some cases, actually using containerized plants that are going to cost us a lot more, but would actually be able to get some size a bit quicker. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Any other quick questions or comments? Nathan.
I have
yes.
I just wanted to also thank your agency for a lot of the pre-fire hazard assessment and work. So we cooperated with your division for some work in the Parley's watershed, which is a drinking water, culinary watershed. And that was a great partnership with DNR and the Forest Service, as well as Salt Lake City as a landholder in that area.
Excellent.
And it was part of a shared stewardship project. And, those kinds of things, I think the restoration is extraordinarily important. And there might be some things we can do to mitigate the real catastrophic impacts of fire with those kinds of shared stewardship projects.
Yeah, it's so important to have good local partners to make any of these projects work. I didn't really maybe emphasize that enough, but that's absolutely essential. Yeah.
Great point. Nathan?
So the question I had was, so I know that funding, you said it was cities and counties. Who else was available for that or eligible for that money?
It can be cities, counties, and then if there are fire districts, they can also apply. However, if there are other groups or entities, they could coordinate with one of those groups, or they could reach out to us and we could write it, but they could still be involved in the work. Or, if there was a private landowner that was interested because of some fire impact, or a nonprofit, something like that. We can also, point folks to other funding sources too, where, we could write one of those, they could write one of these other ones, and then we combine the money to do an even bigger project, that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
one idea was water districts and other
Right.
water providers may have a great interest of having that funding available.
Definitely, yeah. Then there's also things like WRI, the Watershed Restoration Initiative, money that comes through DWR. They could probably apply for that if they were looking for a funding source. And I'm happy to give you more info on other sources too. Yeah.
Great. Yes, Brett.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Question on what is your annual budget for funding for fighting fires and also for restoration?
Statewide. I'm actually not. I'm
Or
in
your
one area.
jurisdiction that you're over. Do you know?
For our fire budget, I'm not sure what the actual allocated amount is for us because it kind of depends on what our wildland fire activity looks like every year.
So out of this 24 million, what part would have come from Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands? Do you think?
That money is so it depends on whose land is burned on the fire. So it's usually divided in a percentage that way. So, if it burns 50% Forest Service and 50% state land, it would be 50-50 that way. And so that's how that 24 million is divided on that particular fire. It's not 50-50, but it's divided out by percentage by land area. And then we also have to, when there is a big wildland incident like that with a lot of money involved, there's actually a negotiation that goes on where we have to decide how to parcel out those costs. If someone wants to do it differently from just breaking it out by percentage, we call that black acres. They could say, hey, well, we want you to cover all the aviation costs because you spent a bunch of money protecting people's homes at the get-go. And then, maybe we would negotiate on that. So those talks do go on, but it's not the same for every fire. There's an agreement that's signed by the agencies for each one. It would be much easier if we had a big one for the whole state. It would save me a lot of time every summer. But
So you made mention that it was a 1.3 million request for reseeding.
Yeah. Yep.
And you were only able to receive 400,000.
That's how much we've been given on that particular request. I don't know how big the pot of money that is being parceled out. We did have a lot of fire activity in the state this summer, so there were some big, Monroe Canyon and some of those other fires were very large as well.
It's tough to manage an area when funds are tight and you are controlled by Mother Nature and how many fires happen in the state of Utah and how to disseminate funds. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to have more funding, if it's possible, but we'll keep writing more grants until we get what we need. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate that. Good presentation.
Thanks.
One additional thought, and it goes back to Dex's comments. Your agency has done quite a bit of work, I know, in conjunction with SITLA and others to manage fuels and also just tree population so that the watersheds aren't overtaxed by, and that if the local watershed councils wanted to get presentations and so on that practice, I mean, that's basically the Watersheds Initiative, that you'd be available to them.
Yeah, we could definitely do that by area. There's 6 area managers in the state, so we'd be happy to come and talk more with these councils. I haven't actually attended the Southeast area one yet, but I plan to, and
Okay.
we're part of our job, so we're happy to come do that.
Well, I hope someone gives you an invitation to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Warren. All right. Moving on. We're a little behind schedule, but we've got a lot of great information. I appreciate it. So the next item was review of the annual report and presentation to the Natural Resources Interim Committee. Candace and I gave a presentation to the legislators there. Carly and Candace did a great job putting together that presentation, and it went fairly seamlessly. I mean, there was a few questions by the chair, I believe, of the committee, but really no pushback or anything. One of our asks was this post-fire mitigation and seeing if there's more funding that they could throw at that because of the severe fires throughout the entire state that we've had the last few years. And not sure if we got an answer, but they're more than aware of it for sure. So any questions on that? You've all got the annual report in front of you or on the table. appreciate Carly putting that together for us, and just a kind of a brief history of what the watershed councils have done in the past year.
I think if I recall, they also asked, is it working or is it still viable? And I think the answer is yes, but we're still growing or trying to figure it out.
I mean, this is getting into the third year almost, second year. We had two years, is it? Seems like it's more than that, but that's true. That's true. So yes, we're still in our infancy, especially some of the local districts, local watershed councils. But I'm very confident that we're seeing a lot of great coordinations and education in the councils, and hopefully we'll continue to grow. And hopefully we don't stall out anywhere along the way. And I think that's up to our council, the state council, to make sure that doesn't happen, and in keeping the local councils involved and interested in what's going on throughout the state. Great. Moving on again. So this leads into our next topic. This is discuss keeping local councils informed during the legislative session. Laura brought that up last meeting, and would you like to share what you had, some ideas that you had?
Well, I mean, if there is a way for us to have a report possibly from our state agency partners about what might be coming prior to the session, because we're already seeing some, draft bill language for a number of issues, and some will be discussed today at the Water Development Commission, for instance. So I don't know if it's an agenda item, and we can have someone from DNR maybe give just sort of a brief on that. I know for our Jordan River Watershed Council, we do a legislative update, like that'll be on our agenda in December before the session. But even we were talking about who's the best to deliver that that
That's
briefing.
a great point. And we've got another watershed council in January, is what I see. That'd be a great opportunity to get the kind of the pre-legislative update on some of the bills that are going to be out there. Right now, it's only kind of rumors of what some of the bills are. There's some language out there, but not much. That's a great point. Carly, any ideas on how the DNR can help support that reporting to the especially to the local councils as well as the state council?
That's a great question. Excuse me. I would be happy to follow up with our general counsel that we have at Water Resources and maybe our legislative liaison to see if they have any thoughts on it. It is tricky trying to keep informed on all of the local councils, so I am open to suggestions on that, but I do think having a pre-legislative brief at this council's meeting in January is a great idea.
Great. I think it's more, unless I've got it wrong, but it's more that a lot of the local councils don't get up to the legislature, don't really hear what's going on, like a lot of us do here in Salt Lake, in the Salt Lake Valley. So just getting an update, like you said, from your legislative advisors for the division, and sending out a little briefing every few weeks would be very, very helpful. So, and we'd definitely bring that up in the state council in January. Yes, Dex.
Just in light of how fast things can happen up there as bills are displayed, I don't know if there'd be anybody that could compile, say, like a live document, perhaps if you only like a Google Docs that updates each bill as it comes in, if nothing else, to see which water bills are being introduced as they come along, which can be a challenge, but it's to be able to at least see and have those compiled in front of you. And
right.
If there are people
absolutely.
that can actually say, what the bill actually does, you know, just bullet points and those kind of things, I think would be invaluable to have
Very
a
helpful.
live document.
Yeah. Okay, we will see what we can do to work on that. I think that'd be good. Yeah, Carly.
Yeah, I will ask about that. I will say a live document that I'm so sorry,
You're
that
fine.
tracks all the water bills is a very time intensive job. So I will definitely ask about it, but it's almost, you know, a full-time job just to keep up with the legislative session as it's ongoing.
Absolutely. I know the feeling. Yeah.
I wonder if it would be at least a start to share agendas from like the Water Development Commission and the Water Task Force with local watershed councils to see what's on those agendas.
Oh, yeah, that would be simpler
Like-
because they're already being done.
Mhm.
But yeah.
I say
that
with,
won't cover
with the live
everything.
document, not necessarily, you know, tracking every move, but to at least have a list of bills as they're introduced
Yeah.
so that you know what to look for as they come.
Great idea. We'll see if we can't start something this session. Yes.
I think a lot of the like DEQ and water resources, everyone's looking at their piece of the pie, and so I don't know if you can compile and say, all right, here's the 4 lists that these entities are tracking. Again, just to know what's out
Right.
there.
No, yep, exactly. I think there's a lot of, like you say, entities that are tracking. Yes, exactly. Yep, very true. Okay, we'll take a shot at it for sure. Okay, moving on to council business. We've got nominations and election for chair and nominations and election for vice chair at this meeting. So at this point, I'd like to open up for nominations for chair at this point. And
Scott, I'd like to nominate Sterling as chair.
I'll second that.
Excellent.
Mr. Chair, I'm of the, I want to ask the question. I'm of the if it ain't broke, don't fix it mindset.
Oh wait, do you have to go or?
No.
Or can we keep the same?
I'd very much like to see the leadership stay as it is.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that require me to go.
No.
Do you want to stay?
And I would be more than willing to serve if that's fine, if that's what everybody wants.
Do you want to make that motion?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'll unless we want to have like do we need to have a debate? But no, I'll amend my motion to keep leadership the same moving forward with Scott serving as chair and Sterling as vice chair.
Is that a motion?
Yes. That's a motion.
Is there a second? I'm ready to second the motion unless Rick wants to. All right, I second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to leave the leadership as currently seated. That's for Scott Paxman as chair and Sterling Brown as vice chair. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
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 Do we still have?
Aye.
Do we still have?
Aye.
Very good.
Are there any opposed?
They're not voters.
I didn't get to say aye, but there I am. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcel. No opposition. Gee whiz.
You guys are doing a great job.
Yeah.
Well, that makes it easy. Okay, motion carries.
Now we're back on schedule.
Now we're back on schedule. So true. Okay, wow. Yes. Oh, that's a great idea. How do we do that? Do we have a list of those that are on the committee? In the actual committee? Okay. 9, 10, 11. Marcel just joined us, right? Is she? She's on the committee.
I'm here, thanks.
Yeah. Val J's on the
Val
committee.
J. Can't remember if Mark, are you on? No, Mark's working for the state now.
I believe the members we have online are Cody Allred, Dustin
Cody.
Jansen, Chris Hamlet, and Marcel Shoup. And if I missed
Val J.
something,
And Val J.
and
Val J.
I believe Val J is here. Yes.
Okay.
Good.
We good?
We're good.
All right. Very good.
We didn't want that train to run off the
We do
tracks.
this next month.
Get you two guys properly railroaded.
That's right.
So Scott, real quick. So I know on my list, we had a vacancy for Utah Leagues and Cities and Towns. Is that right? Is there still a vacancy, or is that got filled?
I think there's still a vacancy. Mark Stratford, do you know anything about that since you created the vacancy?
I talked to them just a little bit. They're working on it.
Okay.
But it hasn't been as easy as getting me to do it.
I'll bet. Okay, we'll wait to hear from the league then on that one. All right, thank you. Okay, back to council business. We've got the approval of the minutes for July of 2025. They were included in your packet in the email. Any questions or comments on those minutes? If not, looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Got a motion? And a second from Nathan. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Okay, and we've got a list of meeting dates for 2026, the first being January 8th, and then April 9th, July 9th, and October 9th. Any issues with the first one, January 8th? That's pretty early in the year, but. Oh. It'll affect, I think, at least two.
I'll be out, but this is Marcel.
I would recommend moving it a week if that would be better for most, because it would definitely be better for me. Let's see. Oh, that's right. We're okay not doing that again this year. So if we move a week, that would put it on the 15th of January, still before the legislature starts. They start on the 20th. So any time that week of the 12th would be fine with me, but the 15th actually works fine. Any opposition to the 12th of January? 15th of January.
What time is that?
It's at 1 o'clock,
Okay.
1
Yes.
p.m. on the 15th. Okay, if everybody's fine with that, we will move that date.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure the auditorium is available that day. AV team, can you verify whether January 15th is available?
Please stand by.
We could have it at my office for that matter. That would be nice, actually. By the way, it's tough to get in here and park anymore. I used to come off of the
This
Redwood
meeting
Road.
space is already reserved for the January 15th date.
So it is not available?
Correct, not available.
How about the 13th?
13th is wide open. Can we place a hold for you?
Weber River Confluence is the 13th of January up in Ogden. And it's only a one-day thing.
12th and 16th are also available.
January 12th. I was right the first time. Right. Do ya? Can you? Yes, we do. 20th. 20th, yeah. It's so 1 o'clock is a conflict. Okay. That goes most of the day, or oh, yeah. If you could do it remotely, that would be awesome. Well, let's shoot for the 12th at 1 o'clock. Change that on my notes.
Thank you, Chairman. January 12th is now reserved for your proceeding.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Okay, at this point, we open it up to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to just provide comment? Go ahead, Strum.
Would this, could our January, have you already thought about the agenda for January, Chairman?
No, I have not put anything together.
Maybe just some food for thought for you, Carly, others is, one of the presentations we heard was Laura. Laura's, one of your slides was a laundry list of issues that your council had surfaced. And as I recall, one of the first meetings that I attended as a council member here is we did some similar exercise. It may be worth time for this council to find that list and draw a line through those that we've addressed or in progress or we still need to tackle. And maybe even taking it a step further. And now that we have our 2026 meeting schedule tentatively adopted, could we even take a step further and put some agenda items, at least some general topics next to those dates, and loosely put some names of presenters and, could we get a year out there in terms of topics and names in terms of strategic planning that we've urged our local councils to do?
Absolutely, that sounds a great idea. Yeah.
I think your Forest Service is what you already talked about. Is one potential already.
I like that. Yes, if anybody has ideas, please, send them to Carly or myself or Sterling. But yes, Carly is the holder of ideas and records. Great comment. I like it.
Maybe another comment while we're in a pause moment here is, Mr. Chairman, you reported that you went to the legislature, reported this report, our 3 or 4 issues that we had surfaced. You reported, of course, to the interim committee. I'm assuming the governor got word of that report, according to our legislative charge. Assuming it got to his office. They have no obligation to report back to us.
Right.
So it's a one-way street here. But we don't need a law to have them report back to us. Could we ask them to report back to us? We reported to you in November, or no, what was it? August, September, whenever it was. We have no enforcement, of course, but out of courtesy, respect, could you report back to us so that we can report to our local council so that the circuit is completed? It seems like that would generate more buy-in, more interest, more longevity in our purpose if the circuit was completed. Otherwise, we just report and we don't know. And it creates a vacuum of wanting to buy in more. I don't know.
That's a great
I don't have
idea.
I don't have a way of how to do that, but I believe there's some good principles in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's like you're playing tennis and you hit the ball and your partner doesn't hit it back, is it?
What happened? Yes.
I think that's really good too. I mean, one of the ways in which state agencies have been using the local watershed councils is to engage them in like the state water planning and other larger, like in ours, the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan. But it should be more, not as ad hoc as that. I feel like it should be a little bit more strategic.
Agreed. And that's why we have a lot of the state agencies on this on this committee, on this council.
Yeah.
Candace would be a great one to find out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who can we ask on the legislative side or even the governor's office side for a report back or for their understanding of or questions that they might have the council, that sort of thing. Okay, makes sense.
Scott, wasn't there like a legislative group, a subgroup in this
Yes.
council as well? Any results from that, or have them be the liaison?
Results are that there is only one
way
communications, but doesn't mean it has to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good point.
On the others, that unified water infrastructure plan and fund stuff is also impacting every one of the local watersheds, I would think. So I know there's some engagement there too.
Yeah. And there definitely will be some future engagement. Since I think this next year, that has to be completed. So, yeah, definitely. All right, any further comments? If not, entertain a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
There you go.
I'll entertain I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Brett. Second. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
It's 2:57.
January.
You're right there, man, right there.
I was worried.
We're gonna type meetings, Scott.
That's right.
I'm sorry.